Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Chris Moneymaker joins me on the line right now. Chris, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. A little early in the morning, but doing okay.
Yeah, you got to get an early start, early to bed, early to rise, right? Hey, man, thank you so much for taking the time. A lot to talk to you about. My first question is this. When we first spoke a few weeks back, I know you were in Vegas. You were at the Rio, the World Series of Poker, the main event. How did everything go out there for you in Vegas?
Wasn't the best year, to be honest. I busted on day one, got it in good, and came out on the wrong side. That's part of poker, unfortunately. Always next year, but I'll be playing every single day, so it's not like it's much of a change.
No, I know it's a constant grind. I'm sure a bust out on day one wasn't what you wanted. But weren't there like a record number of people in the main event this year? Weren't there like a few thousand?
Yeah, it was the second highest number ever. The year Jamie Gold won was the highest. But you can definitely see that poker is on the uptick and people are starting to play again. Honestly, if you're going to bust a tournament, it's better to go ahead and bust it quick. At least you don't waste 3 or 4 days and bust with nothing. I was able to get out of Vegas and get back home a little bit early to see the family, which was nice before hitting the road to be in Sacramento where I am now.
No, yeah, I can understand that. You don't want to come real close, and you definitely don't want to be the bubble boy or anything like that in a tournament of that size. That would probably be not a great way to spend it. But you say poker's back on the rise. What do you think that's attributed to? I know there's a lot going on, with the Poker Go network now, or Poker Now, and being able to stream a lot of these tournaments live as they're going on. But what do you attribute the resurgence of poker as?
Well, I don't know if we're in a resurgence yet. I mean, we've been in a steady holding pattern for years. Basically, we just haven't been getting in the younger viewers. They've, it's gone away from TV and things like that, so it's not as prevalent. The advertising's not out there to get the newer generation of players, the 21 to 25-year-olds into the game. They're going into other things such as esports or DFS, things that are marketed to them a little bit more frequently, where poker is just not able to be marketed to them as much. But you can see a little bit of a steady rise in the fact that more women are playing. That's, more and more that you go into a poker room, you'll see, it used to be, see 1 or 2 women in the room. Now you see 1 or 2 women at a table. So that's definitely part of the rise. The other thing is states are starting to legalize poker again, and when more states legalize, more ad revenue will flow into states, and the game will become cool again, and then you'll start to see a resurgence in poker.
Yeah, I know I'm here in Texas, and they were just talking about changing some of the laws in Texas, and there's some poker rooms you're allowed to go to in my home city now of Houston. So we'll see if it changes. But to me, I don't know. I think that there's always been a appeal to a young person to poker, because I'll tell you what, I learned, and this is kind of funny. It's fun that we're talking right now, because I learned to play Texas Hold'em in 2003 when I was just, I think, 13 or younger, watching you play in the World Series of Poker on ESPN. That's how I learned to play Texas Hold'em, and I think that there's a mass appeal to it. I think it's just, maybe you're right, getting away from some of the television and it not being as prevalent with the overtake of esports. I think, though, if some of these games, if they're more centered around like the World Series of Poker game, I know has a lot of young kids playing on it. Online play, I think, will come back. So I'm optimistic about the future of poker. But since we were talking about the World Series of Poker 2018, you busted out the first day, but you did have some interesting comments on Twitter during that time. You were critical of the poker brat of Phil Helmuth, who's a beloved figure, or a polarizing figure, I guess you could say, in the world of poker. You weren't too pleased with the way that he handled himself when he was eliminated from the tournament. What was going on there with Phil, and what's your relationship like now?
I mean, our relationship's always been fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with Phil. We're not friends, but we're not enemies by any stretch. Phil just spoke during a hand when he knew he shouldn't have. There are 3 people in a hand, and, the general rule in poker is you don't talk about your hand when the hand's in play. and he had an outburst where it potentially affected the outcome of the hand, and essentially cost one guy equity in the tournament in the main event. And Phil does his outbursts. Everybody loves him for his outbursts. He's a character. That's why he gets so much TV time. That's why he's such a polarizing and fun figure to watch on TV. But he's also a poker professional who's been doing this for over 20 years, and he knows better than to do his outburst in the middle of a hand with three-way. It was a mistake by him. He recognized the mistake and then made it right. He bought the guy that busted in the hand into the World Series of Poker next year as a gesture to correct his mistake. So, and again, it's Phil's always going to do what Phil's going to do, but he's also smart enough to know he shouldn't have done what he did. I mean, it was a mistake that he made. Everybody makes mistakes. He corrected the mistake, so everything worked out.
Well, talk about right now, though. You're saying you're playing every day, and is this part of the Moneymaker tour that's going on right now? What exactly is going on with this Moneymaker tour that I've been seeing all online?
Yeah, Moneymaker tour. Basically, I won my online tournament on PokerStars back a long time ago to get in the World Series of Poker for $86, and the Moneymaker tour. We're trying to recreate that buzz. We're trying to recreate that storyline. So we're going around the country, and we're going to be hosting $86 tournaments. And we're going to add, PokerStars is going to add $30,000 to the prize pool in the form of a Platinum Pass, which is a $25,000 buy-in into the Bahamas tournament in January of 2019, and $5,000 in travel money. The one thing that, people, I actually, as I've been getting ready to do this and doing some media and stuff, one thing that I want to make it clear is this isn't a satellite. This isn't $86 and you're just playing for the seat. This is $86, and all the money from the $86 is going into the prize pool, and the seat's on top of it. So if you get second or third place, you're still going to walk out of there with several $1,000s. It's not like, if you get second place, you just get shut out and you don't win anything. It's going to be a full-fledged tournament with just that money added on. So it's actually a really good value, and we're expecting huge numbers all across the U.S.
I think that's a great thing, because you talk about how you got into it, how you got into the World Series back in 2003 with the PokerStars tournament, playing online poker. I think there's a great opportunity for people, because I know I've sat there for so many years and watched the World Series, watched the main event, and be like, one day I'm going to figure out a way to buy into the tournament just to try it once. So this could be my way in, Chris. You could have opened the door for me and so many other people. So that's the Moneymaker tour. And where can they find out more info on that?
You can check it out at the Moneymaker, the PokerStars blog, or moneymakertour.com, I think is the actual website. We're going to be adding stops some closer to you, so it'll be driving distance from you guys there in Houston, which will be nice. And, we've had some complaints that we don't have enough Middle America stops. The first complaint was, we didn't have enough for U.S. players, so trying to make everybody happy, give everybody a chance. That's really what it's about, is, giving people an opportunity to play a $25,000 buy-in that would never have the opportunity to do so. And just cashing in that event. Cashing in that event is probably going to bring around $30,000, $35,000. So, obviously, a significant sum of money just to have the opportunity to go down there and play.
No, absolutely. I think that's great. So moneymakertour.com, go check that out, guys, if you want to be involved. I think I got to figure out where you're going to be around my parts, and I might have to make my way down there. You talk, though, about this is how you got into the game, playing that online tournament that got you into the World Series of Poker back in 2003. What was going on when you were boarding that plane? Were you still in Georgia at the time when you were doing that?
No, I was in Tennessee. I was just outside of Nashville.
Okay, you're in Tennessee.
I was born in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was born in Georgia, but I only spent 2 years of my life there. I grew up in Knoxville, and after I graduated college, moved over to Nashville, and I was just south of Nashville when I won the tournament. So
how was it boarding that plane from Nashville to Vegas? What was going through your mind? Did you think that you had a snowball's chance in hell at winning the thing, or were you just like, I'm excited to be able to go?
Oh, no, I thought I had zero chance. I mean, I'm playing with my friends around a kitchen table with, broke down chips and broke down cards, and I'm going out to play against the best in the world, the guys that play for a living and can read your soul and pick up all the tells. I was just going to try and make it through day one. That was my goal, was just to try to survive day one and live the experience a little bit. I mean, this was a bucket list, once in a lifetime opportunity. So it was something that, no, I had no desire or no inkling that I was going to win the thing, much less, cash in the thing. I was hoping if I got lucky, I was going to be able to cash in the thing, but winning the thing never even entered my mind, to be honest.
Like I said, I remember watching this tournament as it was happening in 03. I watched it, and I remember, and I had to go back and refer to some internet research, but the winning hand, you had a 5-4 offsuit, and you ended up flopping a full house. Is that how it went down?
Well, I flopped 2 pair and river to full house, but yeah.
Right. Okay, yeah. And then the guy you were going up against had Jack 5, so he would have had you beat there at the flop. What told you that 5-4 was gonna? I guess when you play heads up, you're gonna have to just play a lot of hands just to see if they go anywhere, right? But was there something when you saw that 5-4 that you're like, I don't know, man, I might have a shot right here?
Well, he had 10 Jack, so he ended up flopping top pair. The flop came Jack 4-5, so I flopped 2 pair. When you're playing heads up, and we were super deep, so any 2 cards that essentially work together are playable, especially that deep playing heads up. I had just bluffed him off a big hand, so I knew he was kind of tired. He was kind of upset. And I knew if I could flop a big hand, he would make a mistake and basically want to make a big blow and take a big blow against me. So when I flop 2 pair, it's really hard to flop a pair heads up, much less so 2 pair is really difficult to do. And you're going to be ahead of almost his entire range. So for several reasons. One, it's hard to flop 2 pair, but 2, on a Jack 4-5, when you flop 2 pair, it's very unlikely he's going to have Jack 5 or Jack 4. And it's very unlikely that he's going to have a set of 4s or set of 5s just because of card removal. You're basically taking some of his cards away when you have a 4 and a 5. And the fact that he doesn't have pocket jacks almost ever because he didn't re-raise pre-flop. So, you add all that together, you really got to figure that your hand's the best hand.
Well, see, here's the thing. That all that analysis, and I know you have an accounting background, but all that analysis, to me, that doesn't seem like an amateur who was playing just around his kitchen table. That seems like a guy who knew what he was doing. So how much of it in that 03 tournament and every tournament since then, how much of it has been the luck of the cards, but also the skill of the game? I mean, how much of it for you in that 03 was figuring your way through things, even as an amateur?
Well, I was playing a lot of just instincts, and, I didn't know a lot of the terminology that I know now. Man, I learned as the week progressed. I learned it was baptism by fire. I really picked up a lot throughout the tournament. But, I've also been playing it for 15 years now, so my knowledge of the game has vastly improved. I understand all the terminology. I understand, the sad thing is if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have won the tournament. I have a better chance of winning poker tournaments now, but I would not have won the tournament back in 03 probably if I know what I know now.
Why is that?
Sometimes ignorance is bliss. What you do, things that you don't know are good. I mean, back then I was just playing purely on natural instincts and, playing pure poker. I didn't know all the mechanics, the perfect play every time. I mean, now I know pretty much, what the ideal play would be and how to deviate from that ideal play after playing for so long. Well, back then it was just, I think this guy has this hand and I'm going to get him off of it, or I've got the best hand. I mean, in some ways it was actually much easier to play that way because, I'm making a decision based on my read and going with it. Where now I'm analyzing so many things at the table, but the game's changed so much too. I mean, the game was a lot easier back in 2003. In today's game, there's so many people that are so good at the game. There's so many resources out there to help people improve that if you haven't improved and you haven't played changed your game, then you're just going to be left behind. It's very hard to stay in this game without studying it and keeping up with the trends.
Yeah, I guess you can only be a gunslinger for so long before that strategy ends up to your detriment. But and also, it seems like a little bit of knowledge back in '03 was a dangerous thing, but it led you to that championship. And when you won that, and you held those stacks of money above your head in that famous shot from the ESPN broadcast, did you know right then after you won the tournament, okay, this is going to be my new profession. I'm going to be a poker pro. I'm leaving everything back in Tennessee behind. I'm going to tour the world. I'm going to play these hands, and I'm going to see what I can do from it.
Oh, not at all. I was back at work Monday morning at 8 o'clock. I was back in the office. I'm 27 years old at the time. A lot of that money goes to taxes. $500,000 went to my dad, and $500,000 went to one of my good friends. So I walked away with $1.5 million, and when you take taxes out of that, I'm under $1 million walking out the door right there. And at 27 years old, that's a lot of money, but it's also not any amount of money I can just retire and go play cards. I mean, that would not. I spent 7 years in college becoming an accountant. I mean, I should have been a doctor after spending that long there. So I didn't want to just throw that all away to go play cards when basically, it could have been a fluke. I could have gotten lucky, and it just wouldn't have been smart. You hear all these stories about guys winning the lottery and being broke the next year, and I just didn't want to be the guy.
Right. No, I get that, but you would think though, if I went out there at a pickup game in some random basketball court in Los Angeles, I end up playing against LeBron James and Steph Curry, and I end up beating them in a game of horse. All of a sudden, I think I'm going to be a basketball professional the next day. Right? So there was no delusions of grandeur or anything? You didn't think that, oh, I'm the world champion now, I can go out there and win any tournament that I sit down at?
I mean, obviously I thought I was pretty good. I mean, I'm a human, so when you win something like that, you're going to think that you're good, but I'm also a realist too. I mean, I realized that, I got fortunate in some spots. I just wasn't quite sure if I wanted to take on the lifestyle of traveling around the country and playing around the world and playing poker and leaving a steady 9-to-5 paycheck. I mean, if you leave to go play poker, I mean, you don't know when, there's no guarantee you're going to get paid. There's no guarantee. I mean, poker back then, especially, poker tournaments weren't going on all the time, and it was hard to find poker games. I mean, like I said, we played, me and my friends around the kitchen table. We went down to Tunica periodically, but there was only like a 10-20 limit game down there. It's not like you could just go and play poker like you can now in any city basically all across the U.S. I mean, and there's a poker tournament going on every single day. It wasn't like that back then. It was very, very, very spread out. I mean, there were probably about 5 or 6 tournaments throughout the year, and there were no small tournaments. I mean, it was all, $5,000 buy-in tournaments. There was no $200 buy-in tournaments every day or $100 tournaments. So it's not like you could just go and basically grind and make a living back then playing poker. It was very difficult to do.
Okay, I can understand that, but you definitely bet on yourself though in the years following. Became a poker pro. But a lot of things are attributed to that '03 tournament. I work in the business of pro wrestling, right? And when a guy comes out and he gets a huge reaction, they call that a Road Warrior pop, and it's about these, this tag team back in the day called the Road Warriors, right? And they would get these massive ovations, and so they have that term attributed to their name. There's a term attributed to your name. It's called the Moneymaker boom, right? Or the Moneymaker effect. And it talks about like just the rise of poker since your win in 2003. How does that make you feel? And do you feel that there was a real Moneymaker boom and it was based on your win?
Well, I mean, of course it makes you feel good. I mean, anytime you have an effect named after you, it's going to be pretty freaking cool. I mean, let's just be real. But, there's a lot of things that went into my year. What a lot of people don't realize is there was an amateur that won it the year before me, Robert Bartoni. He was just as amateurish as I was. Out of nowhere, New York guy just won the tournament. The difference between my year and his year is, first of all, he was an MIT guy, so people just didn't relate to him because he was a smart guy. I mean, you look at me and I look like a dumb heck from Tennessee, and if I can win the tournament, then you can win the tournament. You look at like Robert Marconi win the tournament. Well, again, he's an MIT guy. I mean, you don't really think that you're smarter than him or can relate to him. So, he doesn't, drive you to go try and do it. Where people saw me and they're like, well, hell, if he can do it, I can do it. The other thing is ESPN did a 7-part series for the first time ever the year I won. And he had, the year before, they showed hole cards, but there was only, 2 or 3 episodes, and it was just the final table where they followed storylines back when I won. So you got to see me playing from day 3 on. They picked me up pretty early. It was a little bit different. They edited it very heavily back then, but they knew the outcome of the event before it was aired. So they were able to pick up on me on day 3 and highlight some of my hands and create a storyline for me from early on. And the final thing is the NHL lockout was going on that year. So during the summer and fall, before football started, they didn't have anything to put on TV. So they just put poker, which was getting good ratings on TV, on loop, since there was no NHL. And that's where, you add all that stuff together and you got a poker boom. It became cool to play poker.
I think that it's incredible too, and I guess it was just that perfect storm of things that all came together, which allowed this like you said, the boom to occur. But like you talk about, you have an effect named after you, the Moneymaker effect. Does the Moneymaker effect come into effect when you sit down at a poker table today? Do some of the other players, as soon as you sit down, be like, oh man, there's Chris Moneymaker. I got to watch out. I got to tighten up. I got to sharpen my skills right here because we have a world champ sitting at the table. Do you feel people, I guess my question is, do you feel people get, I guess intimidated would be the right word when you sit down at a table?
Well, people do one of two things. They feel very polarized against me in the fact that when I sit down, they're either going to try to attack me and try to outplay me, or they're going to stay out of my way and respect my respect my play. It's going to be one of the two. And it's like that with anybody that's sort of a known personality in poker. Again, people are human. They want, people want validation. People want to, especially poker players have a lot of ego. So a lot of times people are going to come at the better player or the known player and try to outplay them and put a fancy play on them and show everybody. And then other times people are playing for different reasons. They're trying to make money or they're, scared. So they'll stay out of my way. But, after playing with someone for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I can pretty much pick up, okay, this guy's either going to be coming at me or I can bluff this guy because he's going to stay out of my way. And then you'll have some guys that have been playing poker for, 20 years, 10 years. They've played with so many celebrities and poker pros that they just play their normal game. They play me like they would play anybody else. But more times than not, especially like when you play like a Moneymaker tour where it's an $86 buy-in, people are going to be playing either really scared or really aggressive at me.
Well, I guess it's a gift and a curse. But is there anybody, I guess shoe on the other foot, is there anybody that when you sit down at a table, if you're doing the World Series or you're on the World Poker Tour or you're even doing the Moneymaker Tour, wherever, is there anybody when you sit down and you look across the table and you see, I don't know, for example, a Phil Helmuth, a Daniel Negreanu, anybody like that, is there anybody that you're like, okay, I'm going to have to be on my best game right here?
Well, not really, because, again, I've been doing this for so long. I just try to play my best game all the time. Eric Seidel, for whatever reason, has my number. So whenever I sit down with him, I get a little bit like, okay, I got to really buckle down because this guy's got my number. He beat me several years in a row in NBC Heads Up, and he's beaten me in some other tournaments. So when I see him, I know I've got to, it's not that I'm trying to play my A game. I might go out and I'll play that, not play as many pots with him. But that's just general smart poker. I mean, if you're sitting down at a table and you're playing with 5 recreational guys and 4 professionals, you're going to generally avoid the professionals unless you really are forced to play with them, because they're just easier spots to make money. So you're going to focus on the spots that are easier to make money than trying to clash heads with someone that knows what they're doing. And that's just, natural poker. It's going to be, that's what you're going to do in general. So, of course, I'm going to play differently against someone like Helmuth than I would just a regular guy, but not because he's Helmuth, but because, he's a poker professional and he knows what he's doing. And a lot of times it's actually easier to play against those guys because I know what the ranges are. I know what the thought process is. I know what they're, where they should be in the hand, where when you're playing against a recreational player, or someone that doesn't play professionally, their thought process sometimes doesn't make any sense, and it can really confuse you if you're thinking on a different wavelength as far as, I'm thinking, what my ranges are, what the proper betting pattern should be, and proper bet sizing. And they're thinking about, okay, well, I've got jacks and I don't want to go broke here, so I'm going to bet real big. They think differently, and that's just the natural, everybody thinks differently. But when you become a poker professional, you sort of work into this system of, I'm going to play this range this way. And it becomes a little bit more where you can sort of put people on specific hands. When you're playing against recreational players, a lot of times they don't really have that. And so they'll show up with really random holdings at times, and you're just like, wow, okay, I didn't see that coming. Where every time, or most times when someone like a Phil Helmuth flips up his hand, you're like, okay, well, yeah, that was in the range of hands I had him on, or that's, a pretty good idea. I knew where he was at most times.
Or whatnot. I do have to ask this, though. So I was watching, I think it was the 2017 World Series, and it was either the final table or close to it, and I think that was the year they implemented the new rule about, calling clock on a player. I think you could do it actually after 30 seconds, which seems a little crazy to me. What do you think about that ruling? And have you ever been put on the clock, and does that just really piss you off?
I've never been put on the clock because I act pretty quickly. I mean, when I'm at the poker table, I'm always generally trying to think and always know what's going on in the game. I have a pretty good idea what my opponents are going to do, and I have when you play poker, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to build a game, basically a framework for how you're going to play the hand. So I know what I'm going to do pre-flop based on if my opponents do this, I'm going to do this. If one guy raises, I'm going to re-raise. The only time, if someone 3-bets in front of me or someone raises really big, but for the most part, poker goes pretty, standard. You're going to get people either folding or raising. So when you look down at your hand, you look at your position, you know what you're going to do basically right away. And then when the flop comes, I know, okay, well, I'm going to play this hand, this way based on this flop, based on this opponent, based on my hand. And this is, it's sort of like breathing with a poker player. You just know this stuff after doing it for so long. It's not like it takes a long time to think through this. I mean, if you have, if you raised in middle position and the big blind calls, well, if the board comes with a 10 and a jack, that's generally going to hit his range more often than it's going to hit yours. It's just it's a natural thing of just knowing what people's hand ranges are calling out of the big blind versus what your opening range is. So I know how I'm going to proceed in hands. And then I've got a game plan already set for, if I get called, if I make a bet and I get called, what am I going to do on certain turns and certain rivers? And people are used to play, 24, 36 tables at a time. So, and 30 seconds is forever to sit there and think about one decision. That's, most decisions you're making in, 7 or 8 seconds. So anytime that you're sitting there for 35 seconds, a lot of the time it's posturing, it's wasting time, it's not really doing anything. So I'm a big proponent of the shot clock and calling clock on, I don't really call clock on people. It's just I think it's rude at the table to do it unless someone is really, taking advantage of the situation. I mean, there are situations where, you do need time to piece it together and run through and see what happened. But then you'll find yourself in a spot where there's three people in a hand, a guy makes a big bet, and the guy sits there for 2 minutes and thinks about the hand, and he folds. And then the next guy goes into the tank, and that's when I'll call the clock because, if you're the next guy, what have you been doing for the last 2 minutes?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
You just all of a sudden start thinking about it now. I mean, you're supposed to be thinking about it for the whole 2 minutes. What am I going to do if this guy calls? What am I going to do if this guy folds? What am I going to do if this guy raises? I mean, it's not really that hard to figure out, and especially if the guy folds. I mean, after 2 minutes, I know exactly what I'm going to do. If this guy folds, because that's going to be the most logical outcome. Is he's either going to fold or call. He's generally not going to raise. If he does raise, that's going to be probably a much easier decision. But it's pretty simple to figure out after 2 minutes what you're going to do. So for someone to go on and start thinking at that point, that's when I'll call the clock almost immediately on someone there if they go into the tank after someone's been in the tank for a long time. Because, that's just silly to sit there and not think about it for that long.
Yeah, I can get that too. I just think sometimes when the stakes are so high, 30 seconds, and I haven't even been in that situation, so I'm not really one to talk. I'm just as a viewer, it seems like 30 seconds is such a short amount of time to try to think through it. I play a lot of the times online, and I think that's an issue with some of my game online is, they only give you about 10 seconds to make your decision, and I think a lot of the times that it blocks out your ability to do that deductive reasoning to try to figure out what the other guy's got. So I think it can go both ways, but I definitely see your point. If somebody goes into the tank, like you said, after someone has already been in it for several minutes, call clock on them as soon as you're eligible to do so. A couple last questions for you, Chris. Thank you for taking all the time. What would you say if you had to, because everyone's got their style. You talk about Phil Helmuth. He likes to talk through things. Daniel Negreanu, who's a big talker at the table. Phil comes in with these grand entrances, and like you said, he's known for blowing up and all that. What would you say the Chris Moneymaker style of poker is?
I think I'm just, kind of a friendly guy at the table. I try to make friends with everybody. If you make friends at the table, people are not going to play as hard against you in general. I'll say that, when I bust people out of a poker tournament, I get more handshakes than anybody else probably from the people I bust. And, I want people to have a good experience when they play with me. I feel like I'm a good ambassador for the game because if I see someone that, you'll see pros that, try to teach people at the table or talk down to people that don't play all the time. And, I'll pull a pro aside and say, man, you can't be doing that. I try to correct some behavior if need be, but more times than not, I'm just there to have fun and make sure that everybody else at the table is having a good time. So, at the end of the day, I want people to walk away from playing with me and know that they had a good experience and they want to play again, even if they win or lose. You're supposed to be having fun when you're playing the game. So that's my ultimate goal, is to make sure that, or try to make sure that everybody has a good time as best as possible.
I think that's a good way to go about it.
Obviously, my ultimate goal is to win, but, at the end of the day, I want people to have a good time. And if I bust a tournament, I get upset like anybody else, but I'm going to shake your hand and be happy. I mean, I've got a pretty good life. I bust a tournament. It's just another thing. Of course, my immediate reaction, I might have a sad face or an upset face, but that's just, no one likes to lose. I'm competitive. But I'm still going to smile and, shake your hand and wish you well.
Yeah. No, sometimes it's like being a stand-up comedian. Sometimes you're going to go out there and kill. Sometimes you're going to go out there and not get one laugh. But, you got to take the good with the bad. But if you make some friends along the way, I'm sure it's a little bit easier to swallow. My last question is this. And it goes back to when I first saw you on TV all back in the day. And I know you've probably gotten this question maybe more than any other question. But I have to ask it because I have to know. Moneymaker is the real last name?
It is, yeah. My dad was Moneymaker. Supposedly it was German, and it was Neumacher, and they made silver and gold coins. And when it came to England, they changed the name. They've got a guy out in Vegas. He's gosh, probably 90 some odd years old now, but he's updated a website, our family genealogy, for years. He's spent his life mission basically going through and tracking down moneymakers and building a family tree, and any kind of articles or anytime you get married. I remember when I got married, I had to basically call Bobby up, was his name, and tell him, we got married. If we had a kid, you're supposed to call him up and inform him so he can update the website. And so basically, I'm basing all this on his research. But yeah, I was born Moneymaker. It wasn't changed.
In that just, well, what are the odds? I remember there was a Robin Williams movie where he wasn't well adverse to the world of sports, and Billy Crystal was explaining to him that Lou Gehrig died from Lou Gehrig's disease, and he said, "What are the odds of that?" And I think it's like, what are the odds that the guy who won the poker tournament would be Moneymaker? I think that's just awesome. But Chris, I appreciate you for taking the time with us. Let people know anything that you want to plug or promote and where they can find you online.
Well, basically, you can follow me on Twitter at CMoneymaker. I'm on Instagram, but not a whole lot at CMoneyM21. And then also, obviously, the Moneymaker Poker Tour, which we have coming out, starts August 4th out at Stone's Gambling Hall in Sacramento, California, and we'll be all through California up on the East Coast. And we're also going to be releasing some dates in Middle America for you guys down in the Texas area. It'll be easy for you to get to, and it'll be a nice little tour for giving people an opportunity to go down and change their life.
Well, I might just have to throw my name in the hat for that one. That sounded like a good time. Well, Chris, thank you so much. That's Chris Moneymaker, World Series of Poker champion. We'll be right back on the show.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?